What's going on? It's your girl T.I.E here, which stands for Together Individual Entertainment, coming to you with a pre-recording of the bedtime story once again. And this time, as always, it's a theme, and it's a Halloween theme. So, in honor of the Halloween theme, we're still going to do our Halloween read-alongs. As I said before, this is just a pre-recording of the bedtime stories of Halloween stories because, well, for one thing, I have a hard time trying to do it in my costume and everything as I'm working, but let's just say by the time I'm ready to go, I gotta get going to my haunt or whatever. But anyways, I'm gonna make sure I pre-record myself and post the next day or whatever. So let's get into our story of bedtime of Halloween. And so that's what it's all about, the story of Halloween, the traditions and all that stuff. So let's get into it, shall we? Here we go. All right. Grinning jack-o'-lanterns, crowds of clowns, monsters, fairy princesses, and space travelers tramping through crunchy leaves, a chilly breeze tickling the back of your neck. Choruses of voices yelling, "Trick or treat!" and candy, lots of candy. That's Halloween ghosts, druids, and singers. Hilltop fires blazing against a black velvet sky, murmured, "Black is an old graveyard." That's Halloween, too, the way it used to be. The story of Halloween begins over 2,000 years ago. At the time, people known as Celts lived in Great Britain, Ireland, and northern France. October 31st was the last day of the year for them. They called it Saham, pronounced Samhain, which means summer's end. On Samhain, the Celts thanked the sun for their harvest and honored it with a fire ceremony. Each household put out the fire it had used for warmth and cooking during the previous year. The priests, called druids, rubbed dry oak branches together until they made sparks. The druids then used these sparks to light huge bonfires on nearby hills. Later, the head of each household would take embers from one of their bonfires home to start a new life. A new fire, actually. They believed that their new fires, born from the bonfire embers, would protect their homes during the coming year, but on Samhain, they counted on the bonfires for special protection on Samhain. They believed the ghosts of everyone who died during the past year came back with elves, fairies, and other scary creatures. No one wanted to feel a ghostly hand touch them as they slept. No one wanted an elf to snatch their hair or a fairy to sour their milk. So they let the bonfires burn bright and hoped that so much light would frighten the spooks away. In AD 43, the Romans conquered the Celts. The Romans held different beliefs, but they also celebrated a harvest ceremony around October 31st. Their feast honored Pomona, their goddess of fruits. Since the Romans had just finished harvest apples and nuts from the trees, they offered some of each in a Pomona. This was their way of saying thank you and of encouraging Pomona to give them a good crop again the next year. Of course, the Romans ate some of the apples and nuts, too, but they also used them to tell the future. In the years that followed, Christian missionaries came to the Celts and told them about a different God. Gradually, the Celts accepted their ideas until Christianity became the main religion of Great Britain. In the AD 700s, the Roman Catholic Church decided that November 1st would be named All Saints' Day, or All Hallows Holy Ones' Day, a time to remember and honor special people who have died on the evening before All Hallows' Eve, which was shortened to Halloween. People visited cemeteries and prayed for loved ones buried there, but people in Great Britain still held on some of their old ideas. Many, especially those who lived in the country, continued to believe that spooks wandered around October 31st. bothering their crops and animals. So they went on burning bonfires, telling scary stories, eating nuts and apples, and playing a game called Bobbing for Apples. Now that is a traditional game that we still play to this very day at Halloween parties. In some parts of England, folks wandered from house to house begging for soul cakes, curtain buns, or a penny at least. They sang, "If you haven't got a penny, or half a penny will do. If you haven't got a halfpenny, then God bless you." Not all of these old-time trick-or-treaters wanted soul cakes or pennies. However, some would rather make mischief. They traveled in groups, blocking up their neighbor doors or covering their chimneys so the smoke would stay inside. Often they wore masks so their neighbors wouldn't know who they were, just as trick-or-treaters often do today. And if someone complained, they just said, "Oh, the spirits did it." Oh my goodness. Folks in Ireland also held on to some old tradition. Groups of people traveled from house to house asking for food and money, sometimes for the poor and sometimes for themselves. They promised good luck for the generous and trouble for the stingy. But while some did all this in the name of St. Columbia, a Christian monk, others did it for Monk Ola, a Druid god. Instead of using regular lanterns to light up their All Hallows Eve activities, the Irish often hollowed out large turnips, rutabagas, and potatoes. Then they carved ugly faces into the vegetables and stuck candles inside. You know what? That kind of reminds me of, like, how all this began with the story about the Jacqueline and everything, but I think that's coming into another story later on or whatever. But I wanted to let you know that in this one episode of Mysteries at the Museum, which is a good, now teachers, listen carefully. Mysteries at the Museum is a good history lesson to watch. It's on the Travel Channel, and they talk about all these items or whatever from history. And what they do is they go to a museum to look at this item, talk about these items, and then they tell the story behind the item. And so you should really check out Mysteries of the Museum, because who knows? If you have a special assignment for your students, that's the show that you should get them into, because there's this one Mysteries of the Museum episode to where this woman created the first Halloween parade and the first Halloween party and all this other stuff because she was trying to stop these troublemaking kids of, making troublesome in the neighborhood or whatever. But believe me, Mysteries of the Museum is a really, really good show to watch for history class. But anyways, let's get back into the story. The people of Great Britain remembered the old custom of fortune-telling on Halloween. They still believed that the world of the spirits came closer to the world of the living at that time than at any other, and so just maybe they thought the spirits would help them learn what lay in their future. In Ireland, people ate colcannon, a mixture of mashed potatoes, parsnips, and onions, hidden in the food, where four objects, whoever got the ring would be married that year. Whoever got the little china doll would have children. The finder of the thimble would never marry, and the finder of the coin would get rich. Others used apples to tell their future. They would toss a whole peel over their left shoulder, and when it landed, whatever initial it appeared to form would that of the person they would marry. You know what? That reminds me of another show that did the exact same thing. Okay, so there was this old TV show called Charmed, which had the three P's, Phoebe, Prue, and Piper. But one of the sisters died, and a missing sister came forward, and she's sort of a witch, but she's also half white layer, like a protector of things. And her name was I think her name, I know her name started with a P because all three of them had the same letter in their first name. But I do remember Phoebe and Piper, their other sister, I think, was named Oh my god, I forget what her name was, but I know I'm supposed to remember all this because I grew up watching that show called Charmed. And anyways, in one of the Halloween episodes, the girls are pulled back in time to the old Salem times, and Phoebe, the youngest out of the three, gets her future read by a peel apple, and whoever Nisha was, which was a C, her lover would be starting with the C, of course. And what she thought was her boyfriend Colton was actually, spoiler alert, it was Cupid. Cupid was her, future to be. She would never really guessed it, but hey, and it's just okay. Anyway, let's get back into the story. Okay, in 1840s, the potato crop failed in Ireland. Potatoes were a big part of the Irish diet. Without them, many people didn't have enough to eat. Thousands of them decided to flee to the United States to begin new lives. But the Irish also brought with them many old traditions from their former lives, including those of Halloween. After that, more and more Americans began to celebrate Halloween. One story of the Irish brought to the United States told a man from long ago named Jack. Now here's the story of how the jack-o'-lantern started, so listen carefully. Jack was not a good man. He drank too much and he wouldn't share anything with anyone. Jack's the stingiest man around. Folks said everyone knew Jack wouldn't get into heaven, but after he played some dirty tricks on the devil, he couldn't get into the underworld. I'm not going to say the H word because it's not a good word. And where was I? Oh yeah, here we go. Either all he could do was wander around in the dark. Eventually, even the devil felt sorry for Jack. He gave Jack a glowing coal so he could see where he was going. Jack stuck it into a carved turnip, and that became his lantern, a jack-o'-lantern. Jack of the Lantern. You could say that Jack was supposed to be the protector, guardian, or whatever you like to call him as for the lanterns, but instead, I think it turned it back on him. Americans substituted a local vegetable, the pumpkin, for Jack's turnip. There were plenty of pumpkins around in the late October. They were easier to carve, and they looked just right grinning on Halloween. Now, you gotta admit, the pumpkin is not a vegetable, by the way. It's a gorge. So, I'm just letting you know. By the end of the 1800s, people all across America were celebrating Halloween. They especially liked trick-or-treating, a tradition that came partly from the Irish, who went around in masks asking for food and money, and partly from the English, who asked for soul cakes and pennies. Some mischievous Americans ignored the treats and just played tricks. Their neighbors might wake up on November 1st to find their windows soaked, their hay wagon on the roof, or their pigs shut up in the outhouse. And if someone complained, they just heard, "Oh, the goblins did it." Well, we don't do that anymore. We don't tell them the spirits did it or the goblins did it or whatever. These days, they are troublesome people or whatever. You know how that is. All right. Americans also fell in love with costumes as part of a Halloween, an idea that might have come from several different places. Some Irish wanderers wore masks, and sometimes boys dressed like girls and girls like boys. In England, people wore costumes for Guy and Fawkes Day, a holiday on November 5th. And hundreds of years before Americans ever heard of Halloween, Europeans used to hold parades around their churches on All Hallows Day. When some people dressed as saints, angels, or devils, maybe American trick-or-treaters just decided to dress up as ghosts, witches, goblins, and other frightening creatures because they were still frightened even after so many years. After all, a big part of Halloween today continues to be acting scary or scared. And that's what we do today. We basically, kids like to dress up in costumes, go trick-or-treating from door to door, and they receive treats, candy, or whatever. And like me, I'm a scare actor in a costume, scaring people just for fun in a haunt or whatever. Or other times when I'm not scaring people in a costume as I'm waiting to go to my haunt, I would want to go up to the kids or go to somebody and just be friendly or whatever, and, just be that person who is creative or something, So we kind of just bring that tradition still in today, people. So it's a good thing. Unfortunately, some pranksters did real damage with their tricks. They broke streetlights, slashed car tires, and even set fire. People used to be afraid of spooky creatures on Halloween. Now they had to be afraid of other humans, and it was no longer safe for young children to go trick-or-treating. Community leaders talked about the problem. They knew how much people loved Halloween. They didn't want to stop celebrating it, but they had to do something to make it safer, especially for children. Soon, different communities came up with a different solution. In some, everybody who wanted to march in one big parade. In other, schools, parks, and shopping areas held smaller parades for children. They often gave prizes for the best costume. Some store owners cleverly figured out how to stop children from soaping other people's windows. They had children draw Halloween pictures and enter them in a contest. The winners could then color their pictures on a big store window. Now, that would be an idea. That would be the best idea to bring back from this old tradition. And just, we have all these coloring books and everything for Halloween, but we basically just hang them in our window or whatever. But you know what? That's the one thing stores don't do. We should definitely consider, if you're a store owner or your store customer or whatever, suggest to them having a contest to see who colored the best Halloween thing or whatever, and let them put it on their store window or whatever, because that is an idea right there. In 1950s, a group of Sunday school children near Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, collected $17 while trick-or-treating. They decided to send money to the United Nations Children's Fund, or UNICEF. Now, basically, that was an idea many years ago, back in the 1950s, like you said. Even an episode of the old TV series called Bewitched from the 1960s also showed a little box from UNICEF and everything. They would put pennies or quarters or whatever in that little box, and they would do that. Well, you know what? I think we need to bring that back. Bring different boxes back for many foundations, such as maybe Make-A-Wish or UNICEF, like it says here in the book, or Children's Hospital. It doesn't really matter which one. I just think we need to bring that back. So try to get the Cub Scouts, Girl Scouts, your Brownie Troop, your Boy Scouts, or whoever group or whatever group you're in, see if you can convince them to bring this kind of thing back. Because I think every foundation is needed to have a little bit of money to help them out or whatever, because that would be something to think about and something to bring back. Anyways, let's get back to the story. UNICEF helps poor and sick children around the world. Other people thought this was a great idea. Now millions of children in the United States trick-or-treat for UNICEF. Some get money and candy. They take the money into collection centers where adults give them a party. The Irish, who collected food and money for the poor centuries ago, would be proud of these children today. Halloween parties have become another popular way to celebrate in the United States. And once again, some of the traditions go way back. Bobbing for apples in a tub of water and eating candy. Apples bring to mind the ancient Romans and their goddess of fruit, Pomona. Ghosts and other creatures that frighten the Celts show up as costume and decorations today. So, do creatures such as owls, bats, and spiders, which scare people long ago because they come out at night? A cheerful jack-o'-lantern in someone's front window is the descendant of the rutabaga, turnip, or potato in a long ago Ireland. And when someone begins telling spooky stories at a Halloween party, he or she is doing the same thing others did in Great Britain hundreds of years ago. Cloudy October night. No moon, no stars, a dog barks, and you step outside. Brr, it's chilly. Suddenly, something brushes against your face. Is it a ghost or just a spider web? You shudder. The dog barks again. Now you see them horrible, grinning faces coming towards you. No, they're just a bunch of carved out vegetables with lights inside, but who are the people in masks carrying them? Why, they're your neighbors collecting food and money. Now everyone is talking and laughing. The dog is wagging his tail. You give your visitor some coins and apples, lots of apples. Whatever year it is, happy Halloween. Pumpkin art. Instead of a plain jack-o'-lantern, why not try something a little fancier? Be sure to have an adult to help you with the sharp knives and candles. Pumpkin person. Use 3 pumpkins, 1 small, 1 medium, and 1 large. Carve lids and scoop out in yards of each, but carve a face only in the smallest. Discard medium and large lids and stack the pumpkins on top of each other, placing the largest on the bottom. If you can, also draw extra features, add stick arms, and anything else you can think of to make your pumpkin person come alive. Use several pumpkins the same size and shape. Prepare them as you did for a pumpkin person, but carve a different face on each, then stack them on a level surface. That is your pumpkin totem. Noisy pumpkin. Make several jack-o'-lanterns, place them on a table or a box that is covered with a cloth. Place a tape player under the table with a tape you made of a pumpkin noises. They can howl, scream, rattle chains, say Happy Halloween, or even sing Halloween songs, or can tell dishosting riddles. Spooky riddles for Halloween. Let's see if you can guess these answers for what I'm about to say. You might tell these riddles at a party or while you're trick-or-treating, or maybe you wouldn't dare. What do all law-abiding spooks get before Halloween? What colors are the spook flags? Which movie do spooks like best? What is spooks' favorite dessert? What kind of flowers do spooks plant in their gardens? What do spooks' roosters say? What are large spooks with trunks called? What do spooks think about these riddles? Let's see if you can guess these answers. Because in a way, I want to tell the answers, but I don't want to give them away. I want to hear your comments and everything. But hey, that's just my opinion. And you know what? If you can guess these answers before I even give out the answers, which is, right now, I'm sure you already heard these ones before. So, what are the answers? To number 1, a haunting license. Number 2, dread, fright, and boo. Number 3, goon with the wind. Number 4, ice cream. Number 5, marigolds and chrysanthemums. Number 6, cock-a-doodle-boo. Number 7, elephantums. Oh, I get it. Elephantums. And number 8, dishosting. All right. So that was the story of Halloween. Sorry if it took so long, but hey, I just had to pull out all the stops and everything and talk about the TV shows and the history and everything behind it. But you know what? I really had fun. I did. So in the meantime, this is Ty saying Happy Halloween. Bye.